Hi guys, today we're going to be seeing what if Canada had a civil war. So what would probably be happening is the Canadian government didn't really try to assimilate the French. It started removing some French rights, and overall the French people they just felt like they were being mistreated. So they declared independence, and now they plan on taking over the entire country and just making it French. So let's see what happens. So first off, let's see Canada's allies. So I'm gonna call this French part the revolutionaries or whatever you want to call these people. I'm gonna call them Quebec. So yeah, Canada is the allies of the U.S. The U.S. is sending aid, but Quebec is allies with Russia and China, who are sending supplies there, and Canada is allies of the U.S. and the rest of NATO are sending troops and not sending troops. They're sending supplies to help. So let's see what happens. So first off, Quebec troops begin to start pushing into Newfoundland, and the reason they do this is they don't want to have to fight a war on two fronts. So they without since their Newfoundland is already encircled, it's going pretty well, and eventually this part of Newfoundland surrenders. Okay, surrender, and they make a naval landing on the tip of this island here. And yeah, and Ottawa is probably the most defended area, which is probably around here. Uh, Quebec has tried to push, but nothing happened. So, and now they invade Nova Scotia, which was once Acadia, which belonged to the French. So lots of people in Nova Scotia are welcome to this. After some lots of battles, this part of Nova Scotia has been taken, and Nova Scotia here surrenders. Okay. Now Newfoundland is the only place that hasn't been taken over by Quebec on the east coast. Meanwhile, Canada is getting supplies, starting to get more and more supplies, and eventually they're able to make a push here and try and encircle the troops who are surrounding Quebec. I mean, not Quebec, on Ottawa. And Quebec just forms a defensive on these lines, which look a little bit like this. And yeah, but they're losing a lot of land quickly because they were focusing on the east coast, and eventually Ottawa is protected, and they start making a buffer so that Quebec can't take the capital of Canada, which is probably their main goal. After lots of battles on this front here, the Quebec finds a break in the lines, and this island of Newfoundland decides to surrender. Okay, so now all the east coast is secured by Quebec. Now the only front that they have to worry about is right here. So they form a defensive, but Canadian troops are finding some areas where they can still push in, and they keep pushing Quebec out. They eventually start invading the mainland of Quebec, and Quebec is not too happy. They push in from here to try and take back Nova Scotia eventually, but that doesn't work. Their main goal now is trying to take Quebec City, which is the capital of Quebec. They make a fierce defense of the city, and eventually Quebec is able to encircle these troops here after crossing the St. Lawrence River, and they make a counterattack, and Canadian troops are pushed out. And now Ottawa is within reach of Quebec troops. Dun 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 dun. And it just stays like this for a couple of months. And Quebec, eager for progress, looks elsewhere to try and wait a minute, to try and get some gains. So they look around, they start eyeing up, and they realize this part of Ontario is quite close to their coast. So close to their coast, that's a tongue twister. And they make a naval landing and push into the northern part of Ontario. This is not good as it opens up another front, and not many Canadian troops were here. So the Quebec encounters little resistance when they're pushing into that part. And this is just to apply pressure. Eventually, they take over all this coast around James Bay, and yeah, Canada is now being pushed even further out. But after a lot of supplies and a lot of planning, Canadian troops here near Ottawa, they push here. They go along the St. Lawrence River, and I'm not exactly sure where Quebec City is, but I think it's around there. Quebec City is taken, and so is I think Montreal is there as well. And Montreal is taken as well. And now the capital of Quebec has been taken. It demoralizes the French, or Quebec if you want to call them. And they put some troops here, and they encircle these troops. And these troops, now that they're demoralized, knowing that the capital has been taken, and knowing that they're probably gonna not gonna win in this area, they surrender. And now Quebec is back on the defensive. And after quite a bit of rebellions and some naval landings, Canada retakes a lot of Nova Scotia. Actually, retakes the entire thing. Takes PEI, or Prince Edward Island. And now these troops also surrender, because why not? And this part of Newfoundland also has a little rebellion here, and a naval landing right there. And eventually, it's this part, these troops here surrender as well. So now Quebec's gains have been quite reversed, and then this island is also taken, and Quebec's seeing no point of keep fighting, and they realize that it's probably not gonna end well for them. They decide to surrender. So Canada is now reunited again, and now now Canada is trying to respect French rights more, and they give back the French their rights and their freedoms, and NATO and the U.S. are happy that the Canadian government is still in control. That it not been overthrown, because if it was overthrown, Quebec would probably be more pro-Russian and Chinese, and that wouldn't be good for the U.S. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that like button, like Canada destroyed Quebec. No offense to French people or Quebec. And yeah, have a good morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye.